Hello, YouTube. Let me get things here. All right. I appreciate folks tuning in. My name's Nate, and we are going to be exploring this project a little bit deeper. I'm going to start sharing my screen here in a minute, and yeah, we're just going to get right into it. All right. In defense of humanity, for all life on Earth, endeavoring toward liberty and peace, Ssussdriad. Ssussdriad is an expedition into the heart of humanity and our potential, our broken and scattered past, and our profound moment in time. As we reach for a better world, each of us struggling to find peace within, we are combating nutritional, psychological, and spiritual warfare carried out by the rich, informed by centuries of research into the physical, psychological, and spiritual inner parts of humanity. They control our education, news, food, medicine, economy, government, and entertainment. That we still reach, that in spite of it all, we find beauty and bring joy to those around us, that we love, that we organize. We are awakening. And that's why they're trying so hard to convince us that we have already lost. But once we look beyond the controlled narratives and rise above the fear, we see their penetration of governments and capture of industry for what they are, the desperate acts of a small parasitic few who see their era of control coming to a close. Take a good look at this image. You can think of it as Hegelian dialectic. Another name for that is problem, reaction, solution. But just keep it in mind as you're moving through the world these days. We see a lot of it. Whoa, scrolling too fast. Ssussdriad is a living framework for communities to become self-sufficient, a blueprint for sovereignty and self-organization, which can be replicated or adjusted according to a community's needs. This plan introduces a strategy for community sense-making, for organizing around and addressing the many facets of our collapsing civilization in order to collectively plan and build a collaborative, equitable, joyful, and free world. This plan also offers a mechanism for funding such endeavors while stimulating the local economy and making it accessible to all. It's a plan for world peace, and it takes root in Hanford, California. Thank you for shining the light of your consciousness, your priceless attention upon this dream. From Hanford, we will explore solutions in food, education, economics, community, news, and this plan comes pre-packaged with solutions in every one of these areas, as well as a forum for organizing the community around them, and then we will have a mechanism for funding new ideas as they emerge in the community discussion forums. There's going to be a lot of crowdsourcing in this project, and the more we develop, the more we will be able to reimburse folks. Long time down the line, one of the big goals is for participation at any level, to whether you're participating in forums or participating in a game show, you will eventually be able to earn equity in the company that will be as good as cash within the community, and also exchangeable for other currencies, which you can take anywhere. I don't know how that'll work, though. We'll get there. But I mean, there's examples kind of like that around too. So I mean, the whole point here is that there are examples of solutions in every area that matters, modeled around the world. We just have to find them and bring them home. All right, moving on. And that's just where we will begin. Simultaneously to organizing this project, which we'll learn a bit more about in a moment, we will be conducting an open source investigation into the systemic weaponization of the engineered world against man and Earth. We need to, I don't know, take a step back as a community and start trying to make sense of our situation. And if we get a lot of eyes on it, and a lot of these different perspectives, we might actually get a pretty good idea of what's going on, and we might find some collective steps forward. But as this world is cast in shadow, and that shadow is growing, we will carry a light. And we begin by rediscovering our past. Long before human settlements, we were hunter-gatherers. We were tribal. We enjoyed kinship with each other, our planet, and the animals we hunted and consumed. Our communication was verbal. We were masters of story. We had few possessions, only what we could carry, and new technology spread rapidly because innovation was a gift to be shared with all, and because that was one way to make it into the stories. We knew everyone by name, and removing only the poison darts from reach, children learned through play, surrounded by community. We were calm, alert, capable, and happy. And then our Mother Earth began to warm, and like water, our structure changed. We discovered we could cultivate the earth, and she would yield to us her bounty. We began to settle, and our populations grew. Staying in one place, we overhunted and gathered our territories, relying more and more on our cultivation, demanding ever more from the earth. Skills were gradually lost, and our numbers outgrew our ability to keep all the names in our heads. We fragmented. Possessions and power began to pool where families could produce more, which meant a lot less play for children. It meant class divides, theft, and ever more novel conflicts. Go, bud. I love you. Go on. It meant class divides, theft, and ever more novel conflicts. And the thing about power is that where it pools, it stays. At least for a while, because power can enact its will. It has the resources to swallow up and wield new technologies or stomp them out, and with the written word came the ability to rule from afar. The Age of Empires. And although its names have changed, it's what we've had ever since. A ruling class and everyone else. Kings and religion have just been replaced with corporations, think tanks, and secret societies. And it's gotten just a bit out of hand. This is Klaus Schwab. He is the director of the World Economic Forum. You've probably been seeing a bit of him lately, and deservedly so. They are not the only group wielding their power against the world, but they do help us to paint a picture of the problem that we're facing. Klaus Schwab is on camera in 2017 bragging about how successful his organization has been at penetrating the cabinets of governments all around the world. Some graduates of this program he's bragging about are Boris Johnson, Angela Merkel, Vladimir Putin, Justin Trudeau, Gavin Newsom, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and a great many more. Partnered with the World Economic Forum is nearly every major corporation you've ever heard of, reaching into every sector of our lives. A small sample of this list is Google, Facebook, TikTok, AT&T, Verizon, Amazon, Exxon, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Bayer, Apple, Coke, Pepsi, Walmart, and PG&E. They're also partnered with NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, who recently announced NACs, or natural asset classes, which is an investment vehicle for the rich to own the processes of the natural world. Here's Klaus, so you can hear him yourself.
When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. Mm-hmm. I'm with the president, who is a young global leader.
So that was Klaus bragging. This is Larry Fink. He is on the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum. He's also the CEO of BlackRock, which manages over $20 trillion and is a top investor in just about every corporation you have ever heard of. He's also a member of GFANZ, which I mentioned before. Oh, no, I don't think I did. Anyway, he's a member of GFANZ, which represents over 43% of global banking assets. That's worth paying attention to. And they are leveraging that power to force the United Nations' alleged sustainable development goals upon the world. And we'll get into sustainable development on another day. we got to kind of breeze through this or we'll be here too long. Here are a few examples of corporations that BlackRock is a top institutional holder. For those of you listening, sorry, Amazon, Coca-Cola, Moderna, Exxon, Walmart, and I mean, that's not even scratching the surface. The World Economic Forum advocates for a complete transformation of the global financial system towards central bank digital currencies, where every cent is tracked and traced and tied together with our digital identity, and our ability to spend turned off at the discretion of the banks. They advocate for a fourth industrial revolution, where everything is a smart device and we are under constant surveillance. They wrote an article about a future where property rights are a thing of the past and our dreams are automatically recorded and analyzed. And today they brag about breakthroughs in wearable technologies that can tell if you're happy or sad, what color you're thinking of, and even PIN numbers. We need to be paying attention to this, but you'll see that clip in just a minute. But I want to introduce Yuval Harari here. In 2020, at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting at Davos, Yuval Noah Harari gave a speech called How to Survive the 21st Century, where he predicts the creation of a global useless class and the rise of digital dictatorships that would monitor everyone all the time. This one's a bit longer than the last clip because this speech was, I think, like 30 minutes long or something like that. I tore out a couple of chunks, but it's not out of context or anything. If you watch the whole thing, it gets even worse. But we're just gonna. By the way, here, I guess I should have said this at the beginning, but if things get scary at any point, I know that ship might have sailed, but. Just take if we practice a little nervous system hygiene, I guess we can call it, we'll find that things aren't nearly as scary as we think they are, right? When we enter a state of fear, our nervous system is triggered, our sympathetic nervous system, in fact, which we'll get into here in a bit further on in this presentation. But one thing you can do if you find that you are getting a little overwhelmed, things are scary or whatever, wiggle your nose. You can give yourself a little hug. Sounds silly, but science. Wiggle your nose, stretch, and you take a deep breath in through the nose and a slow exhale through the mouth, and you assess your surroundings and assure yourself that you are safe. If you've got a dog around, you can pet him. Oh, there he is. You can pet them and make eye contact. This is how we co-regulate as mammals, and it's how we regulate our nervous system with the breathing. So just and the key is that slower out the mouth. But anyway, it'll blow you away. And if you get in the habit of practicing that, it can be a really powerful thing. But we'll come back to that. Anyway, here's Yuval being the globalists' favorite futurist, historian, philosopher guy.
Biological knowledge multiplied by computing power, multiplied by data, equals the ability to hack humans. If you know enough biology and you have enough computing power and data, you can hack my body and my brain and my life, and you can understand me better than I understand myself. You can know my personality type, my political views, my sexual preferences, my mental weaknesses, my deepest fears and hopes. You know more about me than I know about myself. And you can do that not just to me, but to everyone. A system that understands us better than we understand ourselves can predict our feelings and decisions, can manipulate our feelings and decisions, and can ultimately make decisions for us. Now, in the past, many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough, and nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon, at least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people. We humans should get used to the idea that we are no longer mysterious souls. We are now hackable animals.
Mind starts to wander to the new colleague on your team, whom you know you shouldn't be daydreaming about, given the policy against intra-office romance. But you can't help fantasizing just a little. But then you start to worry that your boss will notice your amorous feelings when she checks your brain activity and shift your attention back to the present. Along with emails, text messages, and GPS location data, the government has subpoenaed employees' brainwave data from the past year. They have compelling evidence that one of your coworkers has committed massive wire fraud. Now, they're looking for his co-conspirators. You discover they are looking for synchronized brain activity between your coworker and the people he has been working with. While you know you're innocent of any crime, you've been secretly working with him on a new startup venture. Shaking, you remove your earbuds.
What do you think? Is it a future you're ready for? You may be surprised to learn that it's a future that has already arrived. As a particular thought takes form, hundreds of thousands of neurons fire in characteristic patterns that can be decoded with EEG, or electroencephalography, and AI-powered devices. In fact, what you're seeing here is my brain activity while I'm wearing a simple device like the one on the right. We're not talking about implanted devices of the future. I'm talking about wearable devices that are like Fitbits for your brain. It used to be that there was very little we could tell from EEG activity. But already, using consumer wearable devices, these are headbands, hats that have sensors that can pick up your brainwave activity, earbuds, headphones, tiny tattoos that you can wear behind your ear. We can pick up emotional states like, are you happy or sad or angry? We can pick up and decode faces that you're seeing in your mind. Simple shapes, numbers, your PIN number to your bank account.
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
It changes you. If you take a genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed.
After 4 billion years of organic life shaped by natural selection, we are about to enter a new era of inorganic life shaped by intelligent design. Our intelligent design is going to be the new driving force of the evolution of life.
All right, so that was Yuval Noah Harari there, closing that little section out. Don't you just love that stuff? Anyway, yeah, and this is the group that brags about penetrating governments around the world and which guides the corporations that control every sector of our lives. And I'm not kidding. I mean, if you go to weforum.org, that's their website, and you can scroll them. Maybe I'll show you at the end of this. You can take a look at what corporations are partnered with the World Economic Forum. It's insane. It's like all of them. Anyway, and things do get darker. We're not going to get into all that tonight. We will down the road. We're going to explore our history together. That's something that we have to do as a community. Anyway, but yeah, things do get dark. Check out the MK Ultra experiments. A lot of folks think that it was just the LSD experiments in mind control that the CIA was conducting. But what most folks don't realize is that 144 sub-projects. Anyway, the LSD experiments were only one sub-project out of like a lot that was the MK Ultra program. A lot of stuff there. But the point is, and it makes a lot of sense when you start looking into the origins of our Central Intelligence Agency, but the ruling class has been building a prison. I need to turn that music back on. Where'd it go? There we go. There you go. All right. The ruling class has been building a prison, and they've been at it for a while. That's Cecil Rhodes. We're not going to talk about him much tonight either. Well, really at all, because I'm already moving on. But we will. You should check out his will. It's an interesting read. They've been at it a long while. And here is where I was planning to introduce that nervous system hygiene thing, but I already did. So we're just gonna move on. But I think an important point that I will still bring up is that when fear is used to control us, we learn to regulate our nervous system. When our history is hidden from us, we discover it for ourselves. When the media is wielded against us, we create our own and we become masters of story. They have all the money, so we generate true wealth. They control the food, so we grow our own and become experts in soil and rediscover our health and our earth. We rise to the challenge, we adapt, and in doing so, we discover what we're capable of. And that is adventure. Hope you're here for it. Fortunately, we can look to the earth for guidance out of this centuries-old trap. In fact, I'll argue that we're nearly out already. In his Foundation Stone lectures, Dr. Robert Gilman makes a compelling case for the current transition from the Empire era, which we learned a bit about earlier, into the planetary era, which is characterized by diversity, decentralization, cooperation, true efficiency, equity, freedom, and abundance. And this page will be available on the website, and if you click on his picture there, it will take you to this lecture series of his, which is really worth watching. It's inspiring, and it makes a lot of sense. But the gist here is that ecosystems, when we look to them in the natural world, have a journey between dirt and old-growth forest. And if we pay attention to that story, we find parallels, we find guidance, and affirmation. Early ecosystem development is characterized by its pioneer species, by low diversity, by isolation, competition, and domination. Sound familiar? And at this stage of development, ecosystems are less resilient to change, less efficient and productive, but they pave the way for later successional species. They do this by breaking up compacted soils, accumulating minerals, and bringing them to the surface, and making strides in their ability to take sunlight, carbon, water, and minerals, and manufacture more and more complex sugars to send into the soil, cultivating increasingly complex biological populations in their root zones. This journey in an ecosystem's development is necessary and creates the environment for late succession species to take over, usually because the resource-heavy pioneers overshoot their available resources, resulting in a setback where nature selects for species who can collaborate. And that's kind of where we're at right now. I think you can see my cursor. Oh, is it set so you can't? Doggone it. Anyway, but there's an image of some basic succession. But yeah, when we kind of lay our human development, here, I'll switch to me real quick. When we compare our human development over the last, I guess 10,000 years or so, and we compare it to how ecosystems develop out in nature, we find a lot of parallels. And that's pretty cool because what it suggests is that we've got the winds of cultural evolution at our back, and that this is a process. What we're experiencing, this chaos, is that overlap period, right? And it's a pretty cool time to be here because we've got the opportunity to look to these later successional ecosystems, understand them a little bit, and we can get a little guidance there. So let's get into the guide stones. But anyway, yeah, so in later successional phase of ecosystem development is where we find old-growth forest, which catches and stores energy and transforms disturbance into life. Earth's old-growth forests are diverse, collaborative, resilient, healthy, and abundant. Welcome to the planetary era. Ah, doggone it. Anyway, that's supposed to not be overlapped, but let's take a look at our guide stones, which I was planning to have another camera there, and then that didn't work out. So let's see if this reaches so I can kind of come over here real quick. Oh, it's not going to reach all the way. That's all right. We can kind of see it. All right. So hopefully you're starting to get kind of familiar with this mind map. I call it the star chart. My grandpa named it. But if you look to the left, we've got our guide stones, and that's essentially the research that backs up the design of this project. and really informs the direction that I hope we will be moving collectively. I think that, anyway, we'll just get into it. Alrighty. Oh, did I not have it on? Oh, shoot. I meant to have it like that and then show you. So yeah, guide stones right over there. Yeah. I'm getting all squirrely. See, this is why I have a page for this. Anyway, guide stones, and these can be also thought of as frameworks for understanding, which will help to elucidate the elements and relationships that are designed into this expedition. Yeah, so if you didn't guess already, this endeavor is patterned after nature. Every breath ever breathed, idea imagined, first step taken, owes itself to the processes of this planet, to the dynamic and diverse range of behaviors and relationships that make up life on Earth. Written into the soil, the forest creek, and the human body are patterns that represent billions of years of accumulated wisdom. If we take the time to learn from our greatest teacher, we can apply these patterns to our own lives, resulting in more creative, resilient, and self-sufficient homes, neighborhoods, businesses, communities, and someday, society. And that's our job here in Hanford. And anywhere else in the world where you might be seeing this someday. This project is designed to be a blueprint, so it can just be picked up and ran with anywhere, and we will, over time, develop more and more refined resources that will be freely available to the world. So we'll share our experience and gather case studies from other places around the world as well. Hey guys, if you're just tuning in on Instagram, I am live on YouTube where you can get the whole experience. So yeah, all right, back to you, YouTube. A lot of the pieces for this project came together. Well, for one, when I was sitting in jail in, was that 2015? But besides that, later on in 2017, I discovered permaculture when I was fighting for Hidden Valley Park, and I was looking for solutions for that land. Some friends introduced me to Joe Rogan, specifically the episode with Paul Stamets, and he mentioned permaculture, and there were just a lot of ideas that really, tickled my mind. And then I stumbled upon a video by Brad Lancaster, who we'll meet at some point. And I started to learn about permaculture, and it is, you can consider it, for the sake of this presentation, let's think of permaculture as a lens, a design lens through which we can look at our world, our environment, and when we plan with these particular things in mind, so we do have some ethics and we've got some principles, right? Earth care, people care, fair share. It's pretty straightforward. And then if you want to come back on your own, we will dive into these in depth at some point, but tonight we're just kind of glossing over them. But if you go back and you start to look at these, and I'll provide more resources that will dive into these a bit deeper, but just keep them in mind as you explore the project and learn more about it, and I don't know, things will just start to make a lot of sense. But these are some principles that we find in ecosystem function, and that's where the wisdom is, so we should follow it. And of course, on the website there's videos embedded, but we're not going to play those tonight. Another one of our guide stones is the biology of corporate survival. So a lot of what we'll dive into a bit deeper here is also found in these permaculture principles, but for tonight we're just going to focus on these 6. And the reason being is because this is where this particular body of research is. So the biology of corporate survival, this is some research carried out by Boston Consultancy Group. They are one of the largest consultancy groups in the world. They're working for the bad guys, obviously, because they're working for all the Fortune 500 companies, but they do good research. This particular TED Talk is outstanding. It's about 15 minutes long. It's worth watching, and it'll make this project make a lot more sense as well. But according to research carried out by Boston Consultancy Group, and this was research conducted over the span of like 30 years or so, and several hundred corporations, what they found was that the world's most successful and resilient corporations share several traits with nature. So let's just go through these pretty quickly. Diversity, adaptation, modularity, redundancy, feedback loops, and embeddedness. And these all, once you understand these a little bit better, the project will make a lot more sense too. Because I know that for a lot of folks, it's what just that 10-minute introduction video was a lot of information to take in, and we didn't get into the research at all in that video. So anyway, let's dive in. Diversity. Variety in nature means more ways in which energy is used before it leaves the system. So think about rain falling on the forest floor. On the forest, it's caught by leaves. It's pulled up by this tree or that tree. It doesn't just run off. It's drunk up by this creature or that. It doesn't just disappear. But it can run out of the system, and especially in non-healthy systems, right? So like what we have all around us, the water just pools and runs, and we get a bunch of erosion, we get flooding, things like that. In a healthy forest, when the river overflows, it's soaked up like a sponge because there's a lot of biological activity in that soil. There's a lot of diversity, right? And that biology, just like us, is made up mostly of water. And anyway, it soaks it up like a sponge. But when you've got a lot of diversity in your system, these connections buffer against environmental shocks, and this is your reservoir for adaptation. Speaking of adaptation, systems pull from their reservoir of diversity to adjust and creatively respond to change. Modularity. Although there is overall interconnectedness in nature, everywhere there are subsystems and functional groups. Modularity slows the spread of shocks between components, making the overall system more resilient. We can think, so I guess an example here. The oak tree does not make decisions for the wolf, right? They are separate entities. They are separate beings, but they are interconnected in this system. They're both embedded in this same ecosystem, right? Each has their own role that they're playing, but cumulatively, anyway. So they've got sovereignty, I guess you could say, independence in their own existence, in their own niche, right? But they are connected still. I don't know if I explained that one very well, but if not, we'll dive deeper in at another date. Redundancy. Elements in nature play overlapping roles, each fulfilling multiple needs and each need being met by multiple elements. This means when one element fails, another can replace it. So in nature, we have, let's look at soil specifically, we have different functional groups, right? So we'll have like bioturbators that are disturbing the soil. We have like our bacteria and fungi, which are exuding these enzymes and things and acids to break down the sand, silt, and clay and extract nutrients from them, right? Which then get passed on to the plants through various mechanisms, which we'll explore in great detail at a later date. But so if we're talking about redundancy, if one of these, not so much the functional group fails, but one species in this functional group gets taken out by some virus or whatever it happens to be, they're in nature, these beings, elements, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for. These elements are, like I said, playing overlapping roles. So every need is being met by multiple elements. So when there is a cataclysm, when something happens and an element fails, then there are others there to take its place, right? And an example of that, so if we're thinking of like fire in a forest, in a healthy forest at least, the fire suppression is that need for fire suppression is going to be met by multiple elements in the system. So, for example, the beaver's dam, right, is permeable. It doesn't stop the river or the creek from flowing, but it backs it up and causes it to overflow, right? And then that soil being permeable as well, especially when it's filled with biology, soaks up that water like a sponge. So there's more moisture for the trees, right? So that is one layer of that fire suppression, right? And then some trees in that system may have fire retardant chemicals that they're producing in their bark. All right, let's move on because I'm spending too much time on that. Feedback loops. Nature is constantly changing. As species A evolves, so too do the organisms they feed on, species B, causing a need for further adaptation from species A. These adaptations in both species influence the larger system, and resulting changes in the larger system prompt further adaptation by species A and B. This process repeats in perpetuity. It is through feedback loops that systems detect environmental change and select for adaptation. And then embeddedness. From the root zone of a single plant to the forest at large, ecosystems big and small are nested in their larger environment, allowing for evolution through interaction, emergence, and feedback. I guess let's just, real quick, just give some examples of how this relates to the project itself, right? So modularity, that's one that I bring up in the introduction video. Let's see here. There we go. So the farm, which is right out there, you probably can't see it. Anyway, the farm is not the bookstore. The bookstore is not the Neighborhood Utopias initiative. And you're getting the point there. These things, whether it's the forums or the Finding Hanford website, or the Ssussdriad site, or we'll get into this school a bit later, the bookstore, or the farm, or the Neighborhoods initiative, these are all modular in the sense that they are operating independently of each other, right? They have their own thing going on, just like the wolf and the oak tree. But they are embedded in this larger system and cooperating in various ways, and it's that cooperation that really makes things shine. And then let's get back here. Feedback loops. A good example of that would be that these discussion forums that we're going to have, which we'll dive a bit deeper into here soon. Shoot, already 40 minutes? Man, this is going way longer than I thought. Sorry. Anyway, so feedback loops. We will have these discussion forums where anyone can engage, and we're going to get more into those in a bit. But we'll also have voluntary surveys and things of that nature. But we'll also be using AI in various ways and machine learning and gathering data in a non-intrusive way. All of our data gathering will be voluntary and transparent. But these will all be various feedback loops that we can use to then pull on our reservoir for adaptation, which is our diversity. And our diversity is coming from not only all of the various things that we're going to be doing all simultaneously, like these various initiatives, right? And there'll be overlapping roles. So our farm, the Ssussdriad farm, will not be the only farm producing produce for the bookstore or restaurant or for the online marketplace, right? We will be sourcing from other regenerative farms in the area. So that is diversity. So if something happens on our farm, there's still plenty of other producers in the area that we're able to source from, so people keep getting fed, right? Let's move on here. So another one of our guide stones, let me take a drink of water, is this research carried out by Professor Cass Sunstein, also working for the bad guys, but we're not going to get into that tonight. We'll do a meet Cass Sunstein here at some point. But again, good research. So In his book, How Change Happens, which I admit I have not finished, but I've listened to several lectures of his, Cass Sunstein argues that social cascades throughout history have had the following three social phenomenon in common: preference falsification, variable thresholds for action, and group polarization. So, preference falsification is the tendency for people to misrepresent their opinions, believing that their peers wouldn't agree. I guess let's just go through and define them, and then because they work together. So anyway, variable thresholds for action. Some people require no support at all before they will say what they think or join a movement. Some need to see at least one other person acting before they will join. Some two, some three, and on into infinity. A great example of this, and I should have grabbed the clip for this stream, but I didn't, is a viral video back when I was in high school of this one guy. There's a music festival. There's a hill full of people. He gets up and starts dancing, right? And he's dancing all alone. And he's dancing alone for like 5 minutes. And he's just grooving, right? And then eventually, one other person goes up and joins him and starts dancing. And the next thing you know, 2 more. And then 4 more. And then 8 more. And then before you know it, this whole hillside is filled with people dancing. And that's just a beautiful thing. But that is a great example of variable thresholds for action. It's just something that seems to be, hardwired into us maybe. I don't know. I mean, these are all things that we'll be exploring more, but this research does make a lot of sense. And then also group polarization, which is the tendency for a group of like-minded individuals to make decisions that are more extreme than the initial inclination of its members. All right, so to get, I guess, another, so an example of preference falsification, it's an important one. It's one that he uses in his book. So he talks about, and I want to say it's some area of Saudi Arabia where the men still have custodialship over the women. And they make the decision for the women that the women are not allowed to enter the workforce, right? And the researchers that were there that were conducting these surveys, they essentially asked if men thought that women could enter the workforce. And what they found was that though publicly everyone seemed to agree that they should not enter the workforce, right, that things should stay the way they are, what they discovered was that privately, in these surveys, they were saying that they should not only like should they be allowed, but like maybe it's time is kind of the sense they were getting. But that was the younger generation, and these folks seemed to all think that their peers would not agree with them, so they kept their mouths shut. But when they disclosed that information, when they showed the research to these people, within just a few months there was this huge spike of women in the workplace. And I mean, that's just a fascinating phenomenon. And all of these are planned into so let me just one little bit, I guess, about Cass Sunstein. From my assessment of the reason for this research in this book is because the powers that be have a vested interest in understanding how social cascades happen, how change occurs, right? And it's in their best interest to understand this so that they can, use their whatever data gathering mechanisms they can to keep a pulse on things, right? To identify these movements and stop them before they begin. But we can take the same information and we can design for it. So all of these are designed into this project, right? And the more familiar you get with these concepts, the more the rest of the project will make sense and things will just kind of start to click, I hope. So that's a big part of why there's such a heavy media focus in this project, with the game shows, with the marketplace, with all these things. Anyway, and of course the discussion forums and the surveys, and because I think the surveys will be a really powerful tool for not only collective sense making, but for community self-discovery, right? And it will not be like me, for example, making deciding what questions are going to be asked in these surveys, because that's a dangerous thing too. Instead, these questions will be brought up and voted on and discussed in the community discussion forums. So these questions that make their way to the surveys, which anybody in the community can take, will have gone through a process, and that process will be transparent. Anyway, moving on. And then last, at least on this list, and there is more, as you can probably see on the star chart, but explore that on your own time. I just wanted to focus on these for tonight. So polyvagal theory, it's a new understanding of our nervous system. It was discovered by Dr. Stephen Porges in the 90s, and it's pretty fascinating. So he's making this argument, and a very compelling one that he makes, is that our nervous system can be thought of as being broken up into 3 distinct but overlapping parts, right? So they are modular and integrated. Whoa! So we've got our we've got our ventral vagal, right? Which are these nerve endings, which is why, right? And when we are in our ventral vagal nervous system state, we have a lot of access to our prefrontal cortex, right? Which is where we are creative, compassionate, curious, driven. We're able to strategize, even our ability to recognize patterns. Anyway, very important things moving into the future, right? But when we are triggered, right? And that's a triggering word, I know, but we all are that often, and frankly, it's because our whole reality has been weaponized against us. But we don't have to I'm gonna go off on a tangent. So when we're triggered, when we're in a state of fear, it activates our sympathetic nervous system, right? And that is what we mostly know of as fight or flight. And it's characterized by overwhelm, being frantic, desperate, right? Either like fight or run. Like we're all pretty familiar with that. And then our dorsal vagal, which is the lower nerves, right? Those are apparently really ancient, and that's like freeze, shut down. That's when people pee their pants or pass out. But just if we're focusing just on the sympathetic and the ventral vagal, right? How do we learn to regulate that? How do we learn to not be pulled down into sympathetic nervous system reactions and bring ourselves back to our ventral vagal, which is when we're creative and compassionate and all of these amazing things that we want to be, right? Can be thought of as our optimal zone, which is the term that is used by Dr. Robert Gilman in his Foundation Stone lectures, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. And that is largely breath work, but also just becoming familiar with our nervous system. And if we incorporate this knowledge, which knowledge is power, right? If we incorporate these understandings into not only the media that we are creating, right, but also in how we behave as a company, as a community, then we can just accomplish great things because everyone around us will be happy, healthy, creative, compassionate, driven, and curious. So take that for what you will. And then what are some of the tools that we will have moving into this new future? So I call these the magic arts. You can also kind of think of them as defining characteristics. I played around with words, but and I define magic as the mixing of knowledge, resources, and ability to move the world. And the following is a sampling of the tools that we'll leverage in support of this new age. So in time, this company will be community owned. That process is pretty expensive though, so we're not leading with that, unfortunately. Because it's like a $35,000 minimum to launch a direct public offering. So I was off by a zero, which makes a big difference. So after successful prototyping, we will open this company up to community investment. So anybody in the area will be able to buy and own shares and then over time see returns, right? But what this will do it will not only open up the economy to anyone who wishes to participate, right, but it will pave the way for other community-owned companies, right, and a community-owned community investment fund, which will be a much larger pool of money. And anyway, when we combine our power, we become powerful. Makes sense, right? And if you remember in the introduction video, I talk about a community-owned community and worker-owned hemp industry, right? Producing fuel, paper, plastics, automobiles, clothing, toilet paper, all of these things. That will be and of course that'll be down the road, but that will be a community-owned and worker-owned company, right? And I mean, it's very scalable because nobody else in the state is making like that kind of effort, especially not in a community-owned way. So yeah, it could scale pretty quickly, and I believe that'll be a path to economic prosperity for our whole community. At least anyone who wants to participate. Governance will be cooperative, so I will not be in charge of this company. I am right now because I don't have a team. But if you want to be on the team, start participating. Anyway, as the team grows, we will experiment with sociocracy, I think, specifically to begin with, which is distributed governance. It's distributed authority. So everyone on the team has equal say in decisions being made, right? Everybody has autonomy. And one of my most favorite things about this whole concept is that leadership emerges organically, and it comes from the most unsuspecting places. So you have the appropriate person in that kind of leadership position at the time that they're meant to be. Just because, anyway, and we'll get into all that again at a later date when we dive in deep in each one of these. Pretty much everything you've seen tonight is at some point going to get its own, its own stream and its own page on the website and things like that. But like I've said multiple times by now, not so much in this stream. But anyway, I'm just one guy. So, start participating. We will practice nonviolent communication. And this is and I'm pretty new to this one, trust me. And I still get into yelling matches with my grandpa specifically sometimes. But nonviolent communication is a pretty profound thing. It's based more in needs. So when we look at our language, we hope that's on. We discover that it is a holdover from, feudal era, and being subjects, having kings and queens. Our language is very it's very categorical. It's a bit reductionist. It's very you are this, you are that, right? And when we're not only does that shape our worldview, but it shapes our internal monologue as well, right? So how we're thinking of ourselves. But when we're saying you are this or you are that, that when we go back to thinking a little bit about our nervous system, right? That you are this, and that how when we get into conflicts, it's like these two waves that are crashing against each other, right? And that is an opportunity, I think, for beautiful transformations to happen. And in the short time that I've been practicing nonviolent communication, there have been some pretty profound moments, which I think is cool. But when we are not aware of the power of our language, right, then we're just like, I don't know, we're slashing at each other, and it's not a very healthy thing, for one. But it triggers that sympathetic nervous system response, right, which pulls us from our prefrontal cortex, that ventral vagal state, right, which is where we're creative, compassionate, curious, all of these things that we want ourselves and each other to be when we are conversing with each other and trying to come to agreements and compromises, right? Anyway, I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on that. There is a pretty amazing lecture series by... I can't remember. Marshall Rosenberg, on YouTube that's worth watching. And there'll be plenty of resources gradually being added to the website. and that'll be one of them. But yeah, so we'll be practicing nonviolent communication as a company, and educating our community on all of these things in fun and engaging, ways. We're not going to be shoving things down, in people's faces, but we'll also be very transparent about the reason that we're teaching various things, and all of it, everything is up for discussion in the community discussion forums. All right, this project will be very crowdsourced. Yeah, I mean that's like, obviously it's not something. This is not an endeavor that I can carry out on my own. I would like to have a main team, and so if some area of this really stands out to you, reach out and get in the Telegram chat, which we'll get to in a bit. But yeah, so it'll be very crowdsourced. Just as the forest is a dynamic living song of change and response, individuals and groups, patterns, choices, and relationships, so too will Ssussdriad be the song of community. Involvement and participation by the people will determine our tempo of achievement, our tone of action, and our verse in history. There will be various vectors of influence. There's many built into this plan, and these are ways for the community to influence the direction of this expedition. So we'll post frequent surveys, we'll interview community members, we will facilitate the organizing around relevant topics, which will be in the discussion forums and in-person meetings. And those will be arranged mainly around the focus areas, but also around all the various aspects of this project. So we'll have a specific chat room for the bookstore, restaurant, and for like the Finding Hanford website, but we'll also accept community submissions, like news tips in the forums, things of that nature, right? And then what I would like is folks in the discussion forums, when there are people there, which we haven't launched the forums, we will. There's a Telegram chat right now. I don't want to open up the forums until I get enough people to start testing them out and kind of set a tone. But yeah. So, but in time, one thing that I think will be pretty cool is if we establish some sort of mechanism for reimbursing folks that are contributing in various ways, right? So if somebody submits an article, and we'll have a criteria that the people in the forums help to, create. But if somebody in the community submits an article that is then posted on the website, right, or produces a video or whatever it happens to be, then we'll have a mechanism for paying that person through this filter in the forums, right? So we'll have people in the forums that are taking these verifying news tips, or looking over articles and making sure that they meet the requirements and things like that. And then there'll be a payment process for anybody contributing, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's move on. This whole project will be open source, so it'll be transparent. We will be constantly, and I like to think that 500 years from now, that folks involved in this endeavor will be producing material and resources that will be free to the world and the universe for use. So the whole idea of this project is that it is a blueprint for community liberation. It's a blueprint for community self-sufficiency, right? For organizing ourselves, doing some collective sense-making, trying to make sense of our situation and find our best route forward. And we do have to do something, like we really do. This, I think, is just a groovy way forward, because it's going to be ripe with friendship and community and music and art and so much cool stuff. I mean, we're going to find out what we're capable of, and that's so exciting, because we've really been set back. We have no idea. I mean, the influence that the industrial powers of the 20th century had on our education system alone is pretty profound. Anyway, we will make use of a lot of feedback loops, and I already talked about that one a bit, so I'll just move on. We will work to become masters of story. There's plenty of storytellers in the community that are outstanding, and there's plenty of books out there that we can study. So we will learn this craft and we'll hone our skills, and we will create ever more amazing stories, whether it's through various live productions where like reality show type things, where we are finding the narratives and the story arcs in the world around us and highlighting those, as well as fiction that is created. So short stories, short films, eventually full television shows and movies and documentaries and all that. So we'll get better as we go. And yeah, and then another really important tool that we will be using, and this is a lifelong study. I know it's the one with the tiny paragraph, but the trivium, which is the first of the first three of the 7 ancient liberal arts. The trivium is grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Grammar is the accumulation of facts. Logic is sorting through those facts, tossing out the incongruencies and fallacies, right? And then rhetoric is being able to argue it, right? And project and present. So yeah, and that's just the natural process of learning. It's so basic, and yet it has been removed from our education system, and that was done a long time ago. That was even before Rockefeller and Carnegie got involved. But we'll save that for another date too. Yeah, now we're finally to the project itself. Well, I mean, I guess the whole thing has been. Anyway, man, we're already at an hour. I think it's an hour. Hope it's an hour. Hope it's not 2. I don't think it is. Yeah, so hopefully you're getting somewhat familiar with this graph now, and the more you study it, the more sense it's going to make. Yeah. Ssussdriad. Ssussdriad will be a community-owned company in time of 4 modular business elements, and these business elements include the farm, which is over that fence, bookstore and restaurant downtown, findinghanford.com, and Ssussdriad.com, and we'll get more into those here shortly. But also a school, and this project will be a school in various ways. So it'll be a school, for one, I'm hoping that we'll have a micro school out here. We'll see if that works out. I'm working on something nearby. But so we'll be a micro school and a homeschool resource center here on the farm, where on the farm we'll be looking through the microscope. We'll be doing plant sap analysis and doing bricks measurements on our crops. We'll be managing animals. Anyway, it's gonna be pretty cool. So we'll be surrounded by the natural world and endeavoring to understand and apply its wisdom to our own lives, right? Anyway, but we'll also be a school in the sense that we'll be producing a lot of this open source material that is replicable anywhere in the world, right? And we'll also be a school in the sense that we will host various community training opportunities, and a lot of those will be directed at the or will be tailored to the Neighborhood Utopias Initiative. Sorry, here we go. All right, Neighborhood Utopias Initiative. Simultaneous to the community helping me to organize this project, right? We will be supporting a Neighborhood Utopias Initiative, which is this idea that neighborhoods need to start coming together at the neighborhood and block level to organize themselves around their needs, growing their own food, right? I mean, how many neighborhoods? For one, anyway, I'm looking for ambassadors to start not only getting familiar with this project and then take it to their neighborhoods, right? But to start gathering households in their neighborhoods to come together, organize themselves around the areas of food, education, entertainment, right? And so find some yards in the neighborhood to start producing food for the neighborhood, right? How many neighborhoods have some retirees somewhere on the block that would be willing to open up their home or go to somebody else's household during the day, where you can start having a homeschool club, right? Micro school, if you want to call it that, where the kids in the neighborhoods can gather during the day, and instead of being involved in the public school prison, which it is, and we'll dive much deeper into that, not in tonight's video, but soon, because it's a pretty important topic. But so this Neighborhood Utopias initiative will be a mechanism for the rapid transformation of this town, and these neighborhoods will form their own parliaments, right, which will govern themselves either sociocratically or through some other democratic process, right, because these things will be modular and then integrated into the larger whole, right? So it's that embeddedness, right? So one of nature's most successful strategies is experimentation and selection. And so as new ideas are developed in the discussion forums and they emerge there, neighborhoods that are active will see these things, and if something resonates with them, then they'll be able to grab it and experiment with it, right, on their small scale. And then in the discussion forums, they bring that to the larger group, right, their experience. So they either bring it back and say this worked or it didn't, right? And if it didn't, then maybe the community helps to refine things, and then they try again, or some other neighborhood does. Like it's all freedom. Like there's people gonna do what they want. And that's when we're going to get real creative. And then we will also, the larger project will support the neighborhood initiative in various ways. So one way will be through the online marketplace, through Finding Hanford. So if neighborhoods are strategic in this Utopia's neighborhood initiative, right, then they will they will network with other neighborhoods in the area, right? And they will each select a handful of specialty crops that they can do some value adding, some processing to, right? Make dried this or that, or canned this, or fermented that, or whatever it happens to be. And then you can have community harvest days where you've got a party in this neighborhood, and all the surrounding neighborhoods come together to help harvest and process, right? And package and all that, and then we sell it through the Finding Hanford marketplace, or whatever the marketplace is later on, because the marketplace obviously is something that can scale to the valley or to Kings County or whatever as well. And so these neighborhoods will have a sales outlet, as well as we can work to network with stores in the region, other stores and things like that, folks that want to carry these neighborhood goods. And that's a pretty incredible brand as well. And especially when we start thinking about these community-owned initiatives, like community-owned cannabis initiative, right? So think about this. What if all these neighborhoods that are active grow their own weed, right? And then that's the brand that we are shipping out all over the state, right? This brand of, we send out, there'll be sampler packs, right? There'll be sample packs of weed, a nug or whatever from each neighborhood, and it's each got its name. And then you go online and you're able to see video interviews with these different neighborhoods where they're talking about what they're doing in their neighborhood and how it connects to the sky is the limit, folks. I'm telling you. All right, let's get back to this. Way over time. I need to turn this light on. I did bring it just in case, though. You see me? There we go. So you can see me again. All right. I thought I might be long-winded. And then the community discussion forums. That's where we'll do most of the organizing. Right now, the forums are not launched, and they won't be for a while because, I need folks to, express some interest and to get engaged in the conversation. Right now, that is on the Telegram channel. And then as more people are there, and when we start to kind of set the tone and figure out what we're doing as a collective, then we'll start to experiment with the discussion forums, and I'll open them up. But I do want to really quick show you what they look like, because they are pretty cool. All right. Come on, hurry up. All right, so this is not my forum. This is the company that I host the servers with. But anyway, so as you can see, just like a chat room discussion forum, you can tag, you can post links, all of these things. But you also have threads, which is pretty cool. So when somebody asks a particular question or whatever it is, you can have threads, and there's just a lot of really cool functionality that will work well for this type of venture. In the Ssussdriad forums will be organized around the different aspects of the project. So it's where we will brainstorm and discuss the guide stones. So that's where we'll talk about, polyvagal theory. That's where we'll talk about the biology of corporate survival, and just brainstorm around all of these things, and around finding Hanford and all of that as well as world news, I think. And we'll have a filtering process there where we're doing our own fact checking, right? And then the Finding Hanford forums will organize around defense, entertainment, economy, education, our food systems, general discussion. Anyway, you get the point there. And then the Neighborhood Utopias Initiative, there will be a general discussion, and then there will also, any neighborhood that is active, they will get their own private discussion forum. And then, so they can organize however they want there. So I think the discussion forums are going to be pretty awesome. They're very scalable. My servers right now can hold multiple thousands of people. And eventually we'll have community-owned servers. Eventually, every neighborhood will have their own servers, and they'll be federated and connected to the network, which will make it really strong. But anyway, so let's move on. And so the business elements, and maybe we don't need to, I guess, go into all that, because all that stuff was, the bookstore, the farm, these things were introduced pretty thoroughly in the introduction video, and we've already been going on for a little over an hour. So I think we'll leave it there for tonight. We'll leave it with just that, I guess, deeper introduction to mainly, I guess, tonight was on the guide stones and a little bit of the magic arts. I'll do this again here real soon, because there was a lot more that I wanted to get into, but streaming for 2 hours is a bit excessive. So I guess I should probably bring up the GoFundMe. It's real easy to find. So if you are So it's GoFundMe.com/Finding Hanford. The title is Prototyping Community Liberation in Hanford, California. If you are digging this endeavor and you would like to support it, rent is going to go up on that building next month. And I planned on getting this thing launched 2 months ago, and then some things happened in my life, and I was not as well regulated, like speaking in a polyvagal aspect. I think you get what I'm saying. I thought I was, and I was doing pretty good, and then some stuff happened in my life that I was not coping very well, and it took me a lot longer to pull the rest of things together. But I had a good 6 months that were solid, and that's where the website and most of a lot of the video work and stuff came from. Anyway, so if you can donate to the GoFundMe, it would be very appreciated. Get in the Telegram chat. That's a big one. That's important. And spread the word. And I guess also spend time exploring the websites. Watch through the introduction video another time or a few. I expect that you'll find looking at it through this new lens, if you stuck with me here, looking at it through this new lens, I think you'll get a lot more from that introduction video as well. But also, I think the more times you watch it, I think you'll probably find that there's a lot more there to see as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys, and you folks too on the Instagram. The rerun of this will be on YouTube, and so you'll be able to see the video and all that jazz. The website is there to be explored, so is the Finding Hanford site. And yeah, I love you all. I'm grateful that you took the time, and everybody have a great night.